I do want to continue the college football conversation, but go in another direction with another SEC game. And so, obviously, we just talked about Tennessee, Alabama. It's the game of the weekend. All the great things we love about the SEC, packed stadium, two great rivals. CBS will be there. Let's talk about a game where that basically has none of that. That would be Auburn. That would be Ole Miss. They are playing Saturday at 12 noon Eastern, 11 local time in Oxford. Ole Miss is a 14.5 point favorite in the Betfred Sportsbook, and I think they will cover with ease. They're a really good team. Auburn is not. And so the reason I want to talk about this game is not to preview it, not to break it down, not to tell you if Auburn does this, look out for it. No, that's not what this is about. Instead, why I want to talk about it is because there is a very interesting subplot going in. Auburn, we all know, at some point is going to need a head coach. And Auburn fans believe that Lane Kiffin is very much a candidate for that job. Now, some would say he wouldn't be interested. Why would he go? I can tell you, I've talked to somebody pretty high up in college football, kind of that coaching ecosystem, that said they believe that Lane Kiffin would be interested in the job. Not that he would definitively leave, but they'd at least be interested. And so if he's potentially interested and we know Auburn is going to have a vacancy, it's worth discussing right now. Is it possible that Saturday serves as an audition for Lane Kiffin to be the next Auburn head coach? And so just as a little bit of background, I think everybody kind of knows the context here, but it's worth noting, obviously Auburn currently has a head coach right now. Brian Harsin ain't making it through the year. And listen, I've talked about it a million times. I'm not going to go through it again. I don't love the way that Brian Harsin was treated last year by some folks at Auburn. I always like to say some, not all. But I also think it's clear at this point he was able to keep the job. He had his chance in the offseason, and it's just not working, right? The team's 3-3 right now. There's no shame in losing to Georgia, but they got destroyed by Penn State at home. They lost to LSU in a game they had a 17-point lead, and also they probably should have lost to Missouri. So at best, they probably realistically should be 2-4 with wins over Mercer and San Jose State. They've been completely underwhelming, and it's just clear, like, he's not the guy. He's not going to be the guy. And so the conversation becomes, are they going to move off of him? Why haven't they yet? And really, I think the only reason that they haven't, to be perfectly honest, I think the focus at Auburn right now is to hire an athletic director. Their previous athletic director, Alan Green, left a few months ago. He was the guy that brought in Brian Harsin. Right now, they are interviewing candidates. I think probably part of the candidate process is which candidate can guarantee that he can get in the room with some of the biggest name kind of candidates for the potential head coaching job. And so I bring it up to say, I think the AD is the focus right now, but I also do think in theory, this could be the weekend if Auburn loses like we all expect. And the reason being, Auburn is going into a bye week after this game. That is traditionally when a lot of these moves get made when we know they're inevitable. It happened with Scott Frost a few weeks. No, it didn't happen with Scott Frost. I take that back. They were a week away from the bye. But it happens a lot just to kind of, give time for everybody to settle down. It allows the new coach to kind of just get in and calm things down. You're not immediately going into game week with a new head coach. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why it could be this week that Brian Harsin gets let go. Don't wish it upon anybody. Don't wish anybody to get fired. But this is the reality we deal with in big boy college football. And so when Brian Harsin is ultimately let go, I mean, obviously, look, we know who the candidates would be. We've talked about Deion Sanders. I think Hugh Freeze would be great as the head coach at Auburn. And I think he's very much going to be a candidate should he want that job. He makes a lot of money at Liberty. But also, Lane Kiffin is another guy that is very much a candidate for this job. And so as I look at Lane Kiffin's candidacy, I think there's probably two different camps of people. Like, I don't know. Do you think Lane Kiffin would take the job? Do you think he wouldn't? What do you think? Da, 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 da. And obviously from the Auburn perspective, I think they hope history repeats itself. For people who know college football, they know that Tommy Tuberville in 1998 was the Ole Miss coach, left Ole Miss, took the Auburn job. The question becomes, is it a better job in the current era? Would Lane Kiffin leave? A couple thoughts on that. One, I understand where people would just say Lane Kiffin's not leaving Auburn for Ole Miss. He might leave at some point. It might happen. It ain't going to happen right now, not with this job. I can understand people would make that argument. Lane Kiffin makes like $7.5 million a year to be the head coach at Ole Miss, okay? On top of that, his daughter's in school there. He seems to be, by all accounts, absolutely beloved by that fan base. And so I could see the scenario where even if Auburn called, he just said, like, look, I got a good thing going. I'm not saying I'm staying here forever. But right now, this just isn't the time for me to leave, and this isn't the job for me to leave. And if that happens, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think most people would be surprised, even Auburn fans. At the same time, though, I think if you really break it down, I do think there's reasons why it would make sense for Lane Kiffin to leave, including some things that Lane Kiffin has done himself. Okay? So let's just think about this from a logical perspective. First of all, we can argue how much better of a job Auburn is in the modern era of college football. It is a better job, though. Let's make no mistake about it. It is a better job. Auburn, last decade or so, has played for a national championship. 2013, I was at that game at the Rose Bowl against Florida State. Twice in the last 15 years, they've played for a title. They won one, obviously, with Cam Newton back in 2011, I guess it would have been 2010. So played for a title in 2013, won a title in 2010. They also, oh, by the way, had an undefeated season in 2004. If there's a 14 college football playoff, they potentially win a national championship that year. And so I'm not claiming it's Alabama, but at the same time, I'm not claiming it's LSU or whatever. But at the same time, 3 times in the last 18 years, Auburn has had a team good enough to win a national championship. I thought it was very interesting. I looked it up. Since Nick Saban got to Alabama in 2007, really let me put it this way, since he won his first SEC West in 2008. In total, there's only been 5 years that Alabama did not win the SEC West. It's actually Auburn that's won the SEC West more than any other school during the Nick Saban era. They've won 3, LSU has won 2, everybody else has won 0. Ole Miss has never been to the SEC championship game. So Auburn's just a better job flat out. I think the other thing you got to consider, who was the biggest person that was the most outspoken this offseason about how much they hate the new world of college football with NIL? It wasn't Nick Saban. It was Lane Kiffin. As a matter of fact, Lane Kiffin caused the first Jimbo Fisher press conference that people don't remember before the second one that everybody does after the Nick Saban situation. You go back. Lane Kiffin was basically like, this is pro football. Some teams have a salary cap, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not here to accuse Texas A&M of everything. You guys and girls know where I stand on that. I've discussed it many times. But at the same time, Lane Kiffin has seemed very unhappy with the state of NIL, with the state of the transfer portal, although he's maybe not the transfer portal because he's taken advantage of it. And I do wonder, will he stick around in this next era, right? And like, I think this is an important thing to think about as we talk about any of these jobs, is that especially at the highest level, where you can or you're competing to win national championship, if this simply becomes a pay-for-play, bidding on the best players, then guess what? You got to go to a place where the money is good, where you can actually get in on literally having to bid for the best players. And so I don't know Auburn's situation from everybody else's. I know they paid Gus Malzahn $21 million plus to go away a few years ago. I know they're about to pay Brian Harsin like $15 million plus to go away. I know they just gave Bruce Pearl a lifetime contract over there. I know there's 2 or 3 really big boosters that really just want anything to happen for Auburn to win. And so if NIL is the next front on this, then I think Auburn's going to do everything they can in NIL. And so I think when you factor that in with, oh, by the way, Lane Kiffin hasn't been very happy with his fan base this year. Remember, before the Kentucky game, what did he say? Go back and look at what he said. He wasn't happy with the fans. Here was his exact quote, complaining about fans being in seats for games. He said, when you come back out, when you run through the tunnel and it looks like a high school game playing in a college stadium, you can't let that affect you. He just called his fan base basically a high school fan base. And so that's not a criticism of Lane Kiffin, but it's clear that there are certain things about the Ole Miss job that he is not happy with right now. Now, how unhappy is he with the NIL situation? How unhappy is he with the fan base? But what I will tell you, I've been covering college sports a long time. The one thing that always stands out to me, you talk to coaches about a lot of different things. Why do you leave for another job? There's a lot of factors, family, access to talent, whatever. But the number one reason that coaches end up leaving places for other places, there is nothing that frustrates a coach more, especially at a place like Ole Miss in the SEC, where you have schools that are legitimately doing every single thing they can to put their teams in position to win a national championship. The one thing that'll push a coach out of there, or any school, doesn't matter if it's Ole Miss, could be anywhere in the SEC, Big Ten, Pac-12, whatever. If you believe that your competitors are doing everything that they can to win at the highest level, and your school is not supporting you in that way, that's the quickest way to get a good coach to go somewhere else. So I have no idea if Lane Kiffin is really interested. I've heard some interesting things, and there's going to be other good candidates when this job opens up. But at the same time, I do think it's interesting. I do think it's worth considering. Saturday, if Lane Kiffin is interested, this very well could be an audition for the Auburn head coaching job.